Good morning, it's Friday, November 7th. I'm meteorologist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story. We're talking about a corridor of light snow moving through central and southern Alberta into southern Saskatchewan over the next 24 hours. Continental ridging just continues to hold on into mid-November. It's going to keep a mild and generally dry pattern in place across the Canadian prairies. And that's reflected here over the last 10 days of precipitation. We continue to be flanked by heavy precipitation to the west across coastal and high elevation portions of British Columbia, down into portions of Washington, Oregon, and northern California. And then these areas of low pressure, they kind of quietly pass over the Rockies and then re-intensify as they round the base of a trough in the east, bringing heavy precipitation to portions of the northeast and eastern maritime Canada. Meanwhile, across the prairies down into the northern plains of the U.S., pretty dry. We saw a quarter of precipitation north of Highway 16 over the last 7 to 10 days. But again, across the prairie proper, Calgary, dry, Saskatoon, Regina, you're talking about a quarter of an inch up to maybe a half of an inch there. Saskatoon, you kind of got in on that precipitation. And then over in the Winnipeg area here, just a little bit less than an inch over the last 10 days. Now, the whole pattern is really reflected well by the satellite picture here, infrared. A lot of jet stream momentum from the Pacific Ocean coming in from the west, and it wraps up in these big areas of low pressure across the Pacific Ocean, across British Columbia, delivering a lot of moisture to this area here, being kind of wrung out by the Rockies there. So we get a lot of coastal rains, a lot of winds there. We get some high elevation snows, and then these areas of low pressure, they eject over the Rockies, and they're fairly moisture starved as they then kind of ride over the top of the ridge that continues to build here across the western U.S., nudging up into the prairies. So we've got a storm system spinning here across portions of central and southern Alberta, just enough moisture with it to squeeze out some snow showers here from Calgary down to Brooks, and this will move down into southwestern portions of Saskatchewan as we head through the later part of the day into the overnight as well. Temperatures here, we've got this boundary kind of placed along Highway 16 where it's much colder north of that and then near freezing as you head down south of that. So, southern Alberta still holding on to a few degrees above freezing. We'll see that temperature drop behind this area of low pressure as it moves through the area today, tugging down some much colder air across the prairie. It's going to last for a couple of days here before we return mild conditions compared to average over the back half of the weekend into early next week. So we'll look at the precipitation forecast here again, bringing this light snow out of central and southern Alberta here this morning into the afternoon and evening. It moves down into southern portions of Saskatchewan. Maybe some flurries lingering across the Alberta-Saskatchewan border during the morning tomorrow, but then we're headed for a pretty dry weekend, dry and quiet across the prairie, albeit a bit colder there, especially in eastern portions of the prairie. But that's about it for measurable precipitation over the next 4 to 5 days. We'll take a look here at total snowfall accumulation here. Certainly possible some folks could see 5 to 10 centimeters in a pretty localized band here across portions of southern Alberta into southern Saskatchewan. So a lot of people here are going to see some snowflakes, maybe mixing with rain across far southern portions of Alberta into southern Saskatchewan as well. And then again, just a very narrow corridor here. Could see a few centimeters of snow accumulating here as we head through Friday night into Saturday morning. Again, the jet stream pattern today reflected, by this big ridge that continues to nudge from the western U.S. up into western Canada with persistent troughing over the Pacific Ocean and persistent troughing here across the Hudson Bay into the northeastern U.S. in this region. So this is a 5-day increment. So this shows us here 5-day height anomalies. This right now is focused on Friday through Saturday, so Friday through Tuesday of next week. I'm sorry here. So the weekend into early next week, you see this big trough developing here across the Great Lakes. That's what's going to tug some colder air down here. Again, coldest across eastern portions of the prairie, southeast Saskatchewan into eastern Manitoba. Quite chilly, feeling the effects of the ridge here. I'll keep it a little bit more mild across western Alberta. But as I just hit play on this and let this 5-day sliding window continue into mid-November, you see ridging really holding on across this area. So keep troughing to the west, we keep troughing to the east, and we kind of keep this continental ridging pattern in place across the prairie. And so what that's going to do through our jet stream, this is kind of the raw winds here at 300 millibars, so kind of the higher levels of the jet stream. Again, you see the ridge, you see this trough right here. This is the little disturbance right now that's kicking off the snow across southern Alberta this morning. That'll spread into southern Saskatchewan as we head into the overnight here. But as I just kind of drag this out, you see this ridge, the hump in the jet stream, that being right here, just kind of expanding and nosing right back into Western Canada as we head through the weekend. So your Sunday jet stream pattern across North America is extremely amplified, very wavy here. We've got this big dip, big trough, this big ridge, this big rise in the jet stream, and then another big dip, this big trough. And this is going to bring a lot of cold air. Again, you follow the trajectory of the jet stream here, and we're just going straight north to south from northern territories here all the way down to the Gulf Coast. So we're talking about some very strong cold air advection here out of northern Canada, really getting close to straight out of the Arctic here, then bringing that down through Manitoba, down into the central United States. But as I drag it a little further out into next week, you watch this trough move east, and we kind of go right back into the same pattern where we get troughs developing off the Pacific coast. We got kind of zonal or ridging, kind of flow across Western Canada, and then we get this trough developing in the east again. So again, just being caught in the middle is not a place to be if you want persistent wet conditions across the prairie. This kind of just keeps us on the drier side and on the mild side as well, as we're not really bringing a lot of cold air south, save for the couple days that we do it here this weekend. So as we look at the next 15 days of precipitation from the European ensemble model, so this is our ensemble, and I just kind of smoothed it out over the next 15 days so you can pick out where it's going to be extremely active and wet. And again, it's in the west and it's in the east, and then right in the middle is quite dry. So a lot of moisture being brought in from the Pacific, deposited on coastal portions of British Columbia, higher elevation snowfall there all the way down through Washington, Oregon, and California. And then we're talking about, 50 plus centimeters or 50 plus millimeters, of total moisture here across eastern Canada here as well, into the maritime provinces there as well. So dry across the prairies, except for this quarter of snow over the next 24 hours and maybe some very light showers over the next 7 to 10 days, and then mild temperatures as well. I mentioned the shot of cold air that comes in here over the weekend. Let me jump back here and I'll kind of freeze that at its most extreme across the prairies, and that's going to be as you go through the weekend here, Friday, later tonight into Saturday and Sunday. Temperature is going to be quite cold, compared to average across Saskatchewan and Manitoba. But I mentioned Western Alberta, Peace River, Grand Prairie, Alberta. You're talking about what cold shot here? You're holding on to those more mild temperatures with that ridging in place, and then mild temperatures overspread the entire prairie as we head into the early part of next week, with that cold shot just continuing to move off. So it's not a pattern shift. It's not a shift toward a colder pattern. It's just let's let some cold air slip through real quick and then send it right back into a mild pattern that persists into the middle of November, into maybe the third week of November at this point. We just kind of keep kicking the can down the road. When is it going to potentially turn colder and more active, like some of the global seasonal models say could happen this winter? We just, it's not going to be in the next 1 to 2 weeks at this point. Winds also not going to be terribly bad. By November standards here, it's going to be quite blustery associated with this area of low pressure that's bringing the rain-snow mix from Alberta into southern Saskatchewan here over the next 24 hours. So winds across southern Alberta and far southwest Saskatchewan here, maybe gusting, 30 to 40, maybe 50 kilometers per hour with those winds, maybe 20 to 30 kilometers per hour, but then pretty calm as we head through the weekend. This is your Sunday, getting into Monday. Getting back into Tuesday, we'll take that wind and shift it back out of the south, bringing in mild conditions. And then we continue to just kind of drag this out. And, with the jet stream doing what it's doing with continental ridging through Western Canada, we just don't get those really intense areas of low pressure passing through at their peak. Instead, they're peaking across the Pacific Ocean, and their remains are being kind of tossed over the top of the ridge and through the prairie. So you still get an area of low pressure. It's still a pattern that's objectively, fairly active across North America, but it's not one that across, the central portion of the continent, inland here, east of the Rockies, we're just not getting those mature areas of low pressure to bring in heavy precipitation right now. Just need the pattern to shift a little bit here, because this is what we've got here. Again, this area of low pressure sneaks through Friday into Friday night. Maybe some flurries lingering across the Alberta-Saskatchewan border on Saturday. High pressure, though, on the backside should be pretty quiet, pretty cold, especially across the east. As we head through the weekend, this is your getting into Monday and Tuesday now. This is where the pattern, again, it's got some, the remains of some of these lows being kind of flung through. So maybe some light showers on Tuesday across the prairie. Maybe some flurries at times. Here comes another area of low pressure that could bring some precipitation as we get into next weekend. Really low confidence in the specifics and the evolution here as we get way out to the end of this forecast run. But you see Certainly between November 15th and 20th, some opportunities for some light rain, maybe some light flurries there. But as we look at the next 2 weeks as a whole, who's got the probability of getting a half an inch or a more over the next, again, 7 to 10 days? It's to the west and it's to the east, with a lot of white shading there from the Canadian prairies down into the western and the central U.S., where we just are not getting big mature storm systems bringing precipitation like some of our longer range models suggest will eventually happen. This is the November 15th through December 15th 30-day forecast here for precipitation from the European ensemble. The weeklies is what we call that. And you see a lot of green shading across North America. And I'm not going to really dive into specifics here because this is just a signal that's way out there, but it's a signal that says eventually you see the drier conditions across British Columbia, the higher elevations there, with the precipitation kind of opening up across continental portions of North America. Now, when does this happen? And, what is the storm track really going to shake out to be? How is it going to impact the prairie? That we don't know. But we'll get new seasonal guidance here over the weekend, the next few days. So next week, when I come to you with the next forecast video, we can take a bigger look at what some of the global seasonal models now are saying for December, January, and February. We continue to kind of see some suggestion it's going to eventually turn pretty active, pretty wintry across the prairie, but continuing to kind of wait and see when that will be. Again, mild temperatures holding on. 15 for the high on Monday in Calgary. Those temperatures just at times flirting with the freezing mark with your overnight lows. It's still quite mild for the middle of November. Edmonton, you're up to 10 on Monday afternoon with those highs in the middle single digits for much of next week. Here's a look in Saskatoon. You get that shot of colder air, minus 14 for the low on Friday night and Saturday night, but you're back up to a high of 8 by the time we get to Monday. Similar look here in Regina, minus 11 tonight, minus 15 on Sunday night into Monday morning. Temperatures back on the mild side of average for mid-November as we get into next week, and then we'll finish here in Winnipeg. Again, you feel that shot of cold air over the next few days. It's going to start warming back up as we get to Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. The pattern just remains, compared to what's normal for the middle of November, pretty mild and pretty dry, pretty quiet across the Canadian prairies. We'll talk about what the outlook looks like deeper into winter next Friday. It's going to be November 14th.